today's kind of like my topic's a little bit something I was just thinking about. It's the video's titled Things Change So Fast, and I guess that goes for anything really. The way that certain people act in certain, that might be okay in certain realms of time, things change fast though. So are you going to be okay with how you were maybe 20 years ago, right? Because it's like, look at our civilization in the past 300 years. That's literally nothing. That's a millisecond of time in comparison to, you know, the existence of the world or even the existence of humanity itself. Like humans existing the past 300 years, like it's nothing. But things have changed so much. The past 20 years, the past 30 years, internet, right? TVs that it's like anybody can have a theater in their room now, right? You could have projectors in your room, right? Everybody can probably have a phone, especially in the West. It's like you're kind of expected to have a phone if you're going off to work. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like things change so fast. The way we treat people has changed. We as humans are just learning so much about humanity. And I think that's kind of why people they want to like hinder that learning, because as we learn more about ourselves, we can be better and we can treat people better. A lot of people don't want that. You know what I mean? They want to have this certain hierarchy of how we treat people because they think that they're treated the best. And they might be embarrassed by how they treated people in the beginning of their career, right? It's just like we're at a point in time where some people, they're old, right? And they literally, when they started working in whatever job they're at, let's say a politician, these guys started working as politicians. How old are they now? They're in their upper 70s, 80s. It's like when they started working, how long ago? What, that maybe 70s, 80s? When they, you know, were in their prime age or whatever. They were able to treat women in the workplace, people of color in the workplace pretty bad. And so now things have changed so much in the span of just 50 years. You can't treat people certain ways, right? And so it's just like the way that we're acting right now, are we gonna be okay in 30 years? Are you acting a certain way that it's just like, I shouldn't be acting like this, but I can't help it, and nobody's gonna tell me anything about it right now? Do you get what I'm saying? It's just like things change so fast, and that's scary to a lot of people. A lot of people hate change, but things do, and you just can't deny it, especially right now. I think a lot of people, like conservatives, that's the essence of that name. They're trying to conserve tradition. They're trying to, you know, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think true good-hearted conservatives are like this, but you know, a lot of them are banning books. They're trying to ban books. They're trying to keep us from learning, and I think it's because they don't want anything to change. Things do change. We just have to admit that things change, and they change fast, right? Especially after the Industrial Revolution, and then we have all this technology and that revolution, if that's not what they already call it. And you know, the way that we're learning and connecting with each other and learning about other cultures and ethnicities. It's just like things change, and we learn about each other, and we learn how to better treat each other. Do you know what I mean? But when it comes to time and the way that it changes things, it's like, look at the medical field. Doctors were only able to be men. Nurses, a lot of them were probably amazing health providers that it's like they wanted to be doctors, but that's just not what women did. Women are nurses, right? That is no longer a thing. but that was a thing pretty recently. Time changed things so fast, right? It's like getting no respect, and people, it's like you're not gonna get respect. Some people, some groups in our, you know, in existence, it's like you're just not going to be respected. And it's not, crazy for me to tell you that you will never be on the cover of a magazine, that you will never be, recognized for the work that you've put in because what? You're a woman or you're not white? Do you know what I mean? People telling each other that and talking to each other in those ways not that long ago, right? It's just like you can't say those things anymore. And maybe you can, but are you going to be okay with it coming out in 10, 15 years that you were doing? Are you ready to have to apologize for your behavior right now in 20 years is what I'm wondering. Society's move from being, more sexually liberated to being very Puritan, right? To then being like overtly sexual. It's like right now, I feel like with our society, we got a little overtly sexual. Sex is everywhere, right? And I feel like it was because of how male-led the music industry, the fashion industry has been, like at least, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. It's like male-led. These men talking about women in a certain way in their music and, calling it art, them putting women in a certain light in their music videos, calling it art. It's like things are just overtly sexual. And now I feel like maybe things are reverting a little bit, but people are starting to call it Puritan. And in many aspects it is. And that's not good. That's a sign of fascism. That's literally what happened in like 1940s, 30s Germany, where is like there were a lot of people gaining a lot of rights, and then boom, Puritan. We know what happened next. But yeah, it's like it's time that changes things so fast. And we as humans, a lot of the time, we don't notice when things change until we're there and we're like, oh my God, like, wow, I'm here, whether it's good or bad. It's like sometimes it's so good and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I was really struggling a year ago and now it's this year and I'm in a completely different place in my life and I'm so grateful, right? Or, on the flip side of it, some people are like, I was doing so good and, it's a few years later and I'm right here. What am I doing? How did I get here? It's like you don't really notice when things change because things change so fast. Some people, maybe things don't change at all for them. Maybe they sit there and they're like, well, I'm in the same place I've been for 10 years, right? And it's just like, okay, maybe you haven't changed, but the things around you have changed. And maybe you haven't changed with them. Maybe you haven't, it's like a form of avoidance, I would say. There's avoidance everywhere in this realm. And many people just, they can't deal with change. And it's a shame because change is going to happen. Like you can't really deny it. Things are going to change, especially if you find yourself having children, right? Or if you're with anybody in your life, you know what I mean? With your friends, with, maybe your parents can stay the same. Maybe that would be a solace for you, especially if they're the type of people who don't like change either. But when you have children, your children are going to grow and you can't expect them to not change. They're supposed to be set up by you as a parent to go to college, to get their education, to learn about the world, so that they can choose how they can control the changes in their life as much as you can. We can control a lot of changes, but there's always supposed to be balance. You can control some changes, other changes you gotta roll with the punches. But yeah, so a lot of people, they have kids for control. It's like, and I talk about this all the time, people having kids. I think less people should have kids and should focus on, you know, working through themselves a little more, so that eventually when you have kids, you're just a better version for your children. Do you know what I mean? But no, a lot of people have kids because they want control, and that's like the least, that's like the total opposite of what having kids is, because you can't control much when you have children. It's like yeah, sure, socially you can control a lot, but when you have kids, there comes with a lot of risk. Like, what if your child has health issues? That's not something you can control, right? What if your child has, learning disabilities? That's not something you can control, right? What if your child has a completely different personality than you do, or that you expected? That's not something that you can control. And a lot of parents try to control that. A lot of parents will sit there and try to just make their kids follow some sort of script that it's just like, they're human too. They're not accessories. And I think a lot of people don't get that. When we talk about change and the control of change, I think we just need to be a little more aware of what we can and can't change. I think that's like a big problem with like how we look at things. A lot of people, it's like they need to let go in some aspects and they need to take the reins in other aspects, but there's a disconnect there. And either some people are just never going to make that connection, and maybe others will. Maybe others just need to hear it and things will click for them. Or, maybe they'll figure it out on their own, in their own time frame. It really does depend. I thought about this earlier today and I wanted to talk about it because I'm just wondering if people think about how they're acting right now and how that would be accepted in 20 or 30 years, especially if they're public figures. And, or they're trying to be a public figure. But however, I think with celebrities, it's also kind of like they think that they could do whatever they want whenever they want. So it's just like I think they have a true disconnect of like, they do something, they think it's fine, and then it's like everybody's mad at them and they're like, what the heck? Like, why is everybody mad at me? And then they turn themselves into a victim. It's like a self-serving bias, right? It's like, people aren't mad at me for what I did. They're mad because they're just complainers and they're just looking for something to hate on. But I'm guessing that's a mentality most celebrities have. But either way, it's like for other people, it's like, I think about parents too. This is another one where it's just like, you're treating your kids the way you're treating them right now. I, as a parent, would sit there and think, I don't want to treat my toddler any sort of way that's mean. And I would probably feel really guilty if I was mean, given me being frustrated or something. But what if it turns into like a core memory for them? It's like a typical Tuesday for the parents, but it's a core memory for the child, right? It's like, I don't want to snap or hit them or do whatever parents do because I'm sitting here not wanting them in their 20s to be like, yeah, that's a core memory that my mom did that to me. Like, I can't believe she did that. Like, why would she do that? You know what I mean? I wonder if she even thinks about it. It's just like, do parents not think about that? Or do they think, I get to treat my kid however I want because I'm the parent, and when they're older, they're gonna owe me a relationship because I'm their parent? It's just like, I can't understand that. Do you know what I mean? I just can't. I don't know. Maybe it's because I was raised around a woman who was very much like, don't expect anything from anybody. You do things for people, you do them out of the kindness of your heart. Like, you're not owed anything by you doing something nice, right? Like, and mind you, something nice, when we're talking about parenting, it's forcing children into this world. I don't really know if that's nice, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I don't know. I was really thinking about how time changes things so fast. And, I just posted a video on covert racism and white people tendencies. We have covert racism because you can't outwardly be racist, right? You can't. Many people still do, of course. And many people will let some people be racist, right? But I think when it comes down to, microaggressions and all of that bullshit, why partake in those behaviors? Because you don't know how we're going to approach those behaviors. They're wrong. In 20 or 30 years, it's like, don't these people sit there and think humanity is going to get smarter? Is my behavior that's harmful? I'm trying to make people feel bad. Obviously, I'm trying to make somebody feel bad, right? With my microaggressions. Like, I don't know. Like, do they just expect for people to just forget about it and get over it? I just literally can't understand. I was thinking about it this morning when I was getting out of bed, like, all of these people, particularly women in the workplace, who utilize, white woman tears and, microaggressions. It's like, what are you going to do in like 10, 15 years when I believe that things will get better? Humanity's just going to get smarter, and we'll be able to talk to each other a little more, right? We'll be able to love a little better and communicate better, right? It won't be so stigmatized. What are these people going to do when it's like, oh yeah, that woman was my boss and she was horrible? It's like, what are you genuinely doing by trying to inflict harm in your workplace? Do you know what I mean? I was just like thinking about that this morning and thinking about how time changes so fast. So will you as a person be okay with who you're being right now? Or are you going to have to apologize for who you're being right now in 10 to 15 years, right? Because we see it all the time. We see people apologizing for their tweets from before 2020. It's just like people having to apologize for who they were. And it's like, you know what? All of us are raised in certain households. We're raised in certain environments. But if you were raised in an environment that made you act in harmful ways, I think it is, it is owed by you to do more work than somebody who wasn't raised in that environment. It is your obligation to do more work and to seek out more opportunities to grow. Like people who sit there and like have all of these horrid tweets towards certain groups and communities, and then they're like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I was just raised a certain way. Okay, but what are you doing now to grow from it? Are you going to take a college class? Are you going to educate yourself? What articles have you been reading? Like, what are you doing? Because I genuinely don't think that, like, just saying sorry is enough. It's like you were raised in that environment. You saying sorry and knowing it's wrong just isn't enough. You're obligated to educate yourself like way more. We're seeing all of this. We're seeing people being faced with repercussions. But I still feel like people are, acting in certain ways that they'd have to eventually apologize for. And I think it's getting worse, right? Where we're moving into extreme times where people are just being flat out racist. Men are just being flat out misogynistic, right? And it's just kind of like, what are we doing? What are you doing? Like, what if you end up getting a really amazing opportunity in the future and somebody gets to come out and say, why do they get that opportunity? That's not them coming for you and, taking your opportunity away. You're taking opportunities away at every point in time. You're either taking opportunities away from yourself, or you're building room for opportunities for yourself. You're doing one or the other. So it's like, what are you choosing to do? Are you choosing to inflict harm on other people for your own ego? And it's like, oh, like, that's okay because they're going to forget about it. No. And them holding you accountable, even if it's like at any point in this lifetime, I think they're entitled to do that. So it begs the question, will you regret being who you are? Are you going to regret being who you are now in 10 to 15 years? It's just like something we need to think about. Maybe it's just another question we can think of when we're having a little bit hard of a time leading with love, right? Leading with true intention, leading with authenticity, right? Because I feel like a lot of people, they're leading in ways that they think makes them seem better. They think it makes them seem better than others. Or, you know, higher on the totem pole. I don't know. But in all actuality, you're just trying to make people feel bad for having certain characteristics or being part of certain communities that you deem unworthy. It just doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't make sense to not lead with love. Either way, just something to think about, something I thought of this morning. But yeah, like, share, subscribe, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. But I will see you on Friday.